We leave Uçansu Waterfall after a slow, unhurried morning spent relaxing and bathing in the refreshing waters of the small pool formed at its base. Today is a pure transit day. Our next destination is Lake Taas, nearly 500 kilometers away, so we split the journey into 2 days. That way, there's no need to rush. We simply focus on taking in the views. And combined with the off-road sections we follow, they allow us to recharge, enjoying every kilometer along the way. At first, the route feels like a proper high mountain traverse, a narrow gravel track at times carved into rocky ledges, with others winding through dense mountain vegetation. This section is full of tight turns, often requiring careful maneuvering, sometimes even taken in 2 moves. Beneath the wheels, the surface is uneven and rocky, constantly rocking the prowler and significantly limiting our average speed. But these are exactly the kinds of tracks I look for on my journeys. Far from civilization, deeply immersed in nature. We're still in the Taurus Mountains, heading towards the Köprüçay Canyon. As we cover more kilometers on gravel, rounding yet another bend, we spot a horse standing in the middle of the road. It's one of those encounters that lasts only a moment, yet stays with you. The horse is alone, no harness, no signs of human presence. It feels as it belongs here, as naturally as the trees and rocks surrounding it. For a brief moment, we follow it, almost as if it's guiding us through this part of the mountains, watching with quiet fascination the lightness and ease of its movement, until, just as suddenly as it appeared, it disappears, merging to the dense forest as if it had never been there at all. We keep moving, swallowing up more kilometers, sometimes on gravel, sometimes on asphalt, always surrounded by remarkable landscapes. The terrain unfolds into wide, rolling ridgelines, cut by valleys and dry beds of seasonal streams. The slopes are steep but not vertical, shaped from limestone and dolomite, easily eroded into irregular steps, ledges, and exposed rock faces. The ground is raw and demanding. A thin layer of soil rests on solid rock, often scattered with loose stones and gravel. In many places, bright limestone breaks through the surface, almost white in the sunlight, sharply contrasting with the deep green of the surrounding trees. It's a landscape that may appear soft at first glance, but in reality, it's harsh, dry, and unforgiving. After about 65 kilometers near the village of Karabük, we reach a road running alongside the Köprüçay River, which over thousands of years has carved a deep canyon into the surrounding rock, creating a landscape full of dramatic contrast. We stop here for a moment, to eat something, to rest, to catch our breath. The restaurant's terrace overlooks the river, which seems to flow lazily through the valley, at least from this perspective. Because when we look closer, this calm water has a rhythm of its own. Every few minutes, rafts would emerge from behind the bend. First, you could hear them. Laughter, shouts, the rhythmic sounds of paddles hitting the water. And only then did they appear between the trees, carried by the current. Colorful helmets, red life vests, splashes of water catching the sunlight, some shaped by the river itself, others by the sheer energy of the people on board. A sudden burst of life cutting through the stillness of the place. From above, it all looked almost like choreography. The rafts would enter faster currents, gently spinning, someone losing rhythm, someone else trying to regain it, and moments later, everything would fall back into sync. Paddles dipping in the water again and again, while the river answered with small waves and swirling eddies that only seemed gentle on the surface. Sometimes someone would raise a hand and wave in our direction, as if we were part of their adventure, even though we were just sitting off to the shade with a cup of tea, watching it all from the distance. There was something beautiful contrasting about it. Us in the shade, in stillness, posed for a moment. Them in motion and laughter, constantly balancing between control and surrendering to the current. After this short break, we dive back into the mountains. We covered just 40 kilometers, but it takes us nearly 2 hours, and not wanting to search for a campsite in the dark, we tuck ourselves away in a hidden corner, somewhere deep in the wilderness, far from everything.
Tutaj możemy się ustawić.
O.
Jest piękna miejscóweczka. Rzeczywiście wow!
Jechałem do garażu. A ja będę się schował ze skały. Tak, kuku.
This is gonna be a hot, hot shower. Wrong key. It's like with the USB stick that has 3 sides. Only the 3rd side works. N.
As you can see, at the end of the hose we place into the water source, there's an initial filter that removes everything carried by the water. Positioning it in a shallow stream takes a moment because it needs to be fully submerged so it doesn't draw in air. Then I stretch out the hose that reaches the shower. Usually it's the longer section that draws the water, since we tend to park farther from the source, but in this case the shorter one worked as the intake, and the longer one allowed us to place the shower a bit farther from the car. I also took the opportunity to rinse it off from all the dust it collects on the road, since it's mounted outside on the right side of the vehicle.
Okay, now we need to switch. The water source from the tank to the external source. It's done. And now we need to turn the main tunnel on. We need to turn the pump on. Works. Now we need to open the shower. Open the tap.
And then you just wait for the system to purge the air. Marta's expression says everything about whether the shower was something she'd been looking forward to.
And it works! You can close it.
The next morning is just as slow as the previous one. After all, we're on vacation. The sun lights up for campsite and suddenly it becomes very, very pleasant. The gently flowing stream invites me to wander into the greenery and see what lies a little farther beyond.
There's a cabin in the woods where I go to be alone. It's like
This was one of those places that let you be as close to nature as possible. One of those places where everything slows down. The stream flows gently, almost effortlessly, weaving its way between smooth, rounded stones. Its soft gurgle echoes of the banks, blending with the morning bird songs that slowly brings the forest to life. Sunlight filters through the leaves, spilling softly across the water and rocks, creating a delicate play of shadows and reflections. The vegetation surrounds everything densely, yet never feels overwhelming. The deep green of the leaves contrasts with supple pink flowers scattered here and there, adding a quiet touch of color. This isn't harsh, untown wilderness. It's a calm, harmonious space where everything feels perfectly in place. Just nearby, a small waterfall flows over rough, layered rock. You can read its history in the stone, lines of sediment stacked over time, forming a natural sculpture. The water breaks against these textures, scattering to fine droplets before falling into a small, crystal-clear pool below. Cool, transparent, almost motionless, as if time itself had paused here. And somewhere within this dense greenery, almost invisible, stands the prowler. Tucked between the trees, it blends into the surroundings so well, it feels like part of the landscape. It doesn't dominate the scene, it's merely a temporary guest. This is one of those places where nothing spectacular happens, and yet everything is exactly as it should be. Shortly after 11, we're back on the road. We keep swallowing up the kilometers along mountain tracks. The dominant vegetation here is Turkish pine forest, trees with irregular, often slightly twisted trunks adapted to a dry climate and poor soil. Between them grow junipers and low Mediterranean shrubs, tough, resilient, with small leaves that limit water loss. It's not a dense, humid forest, but rather a mosaic, alternating patches of shade and open, sun-heated ground. Throughout the day, the light strongly shapes this landscape. In the morning and evening, it emphasizes the structures of the slopes, bringing out the textures and depth. At noon, everything becomes flat and harsh, colors lose their softness and the space turns raw and unforgiving. Shade is a scarce commodity here, mostly found beneath trees and in small depressions in the terrain. You can clearly feel the Mediterranean climate, but with a mountainous edge. The air is dry, often carrying a faint resin scent from the pines, and the wind can suddenly shift the temperature, bringing cool air down from higher elevations or warmth rising from the valleys. This mixed landscape has an undeniable charm. It may not seem spectacular at first glance, but it feels incredibly authentic, raw, natural, untouched, and because of that, very real. Eventually, we're back on asphalt. Still surrounded by mountains views, but now in a fully civilized way. We've got nearly 400 kilometers to cover that day, so the paved road brings us much closer to our next destination than the winding gravel serpentines ever could, especially since most of the route is a regular two-lane road rather than a multi-lane highway. After passing through the town of Cihanbeyli, the road surface noticeably deteriorates, suggesting we're getting closer to our next destination, Lake Taas, where you're supposed to be able to see flamingos. As we approach, we have no idea we're about to enter a proper maze of wetlands formed by the lake. But first, we need to figure out where we are because quite unexpectedly, the road simply ends at the gate of some facility. We didn't have much choice. Seeing a dirt track branching off to the left, we just headed off in that direction. There was nothing around us, literally nothing. A vast, empty plain stretching as far as the eye could see. We covered almost exactly 6 kilometers like that, and even though the map still showed a few kilometers to the shoreline, the lake was already starting to appear here, and from multiple directions. At some point, it forced us to stop and figure out where we actually were.
Almost there.
O kurwa, flamingów dalej nie ma.
And we found ourselves in a truly incredible place. Only from above did we understand why the shoreline seemed to surround us from almost every side. This wasn't a lake in the traditional sense. It was more like a network of shallow wetlands spreading out in dozens of directions, forming something like a natural labyrinth. Narrow strips of land intertwined with water, while bright, almost white deposits drew abstract patterns across the surface, patterns that from above looked like a map of something unknown. And suddenly, it was no longer obvious where the shore actually was. Every next stretch looked like the right one, until moments later it turned out to be just another island, another peninsula, another illusion. We tried to push through, but it quickly became clear it was pointless. The wetlands were simply too vast. We had no idea where they ended or how many kilometers we had to cover to find the true edge of the lake. Instead of fighting it, we decided to go round. The gravel road allowed us to move surprisingly fast, and the setting sun began doing what it does best, pulling even more character out of this place. Shadows stretched longer, colors grew warmer, and the raw landscape suddenly softened. Behind the prowler, clouds of dust rose into the air, but not the heavy kind. This one was fine, almost weightless. Our speed lifted it off the road like a delicate layer of powder that didn't fall back down, but instead lingered in the air, spreading gently to the sides. It didn't form a thick dirt cloud. It was more like a mist, a translucent, milky veil trailing behind us long after we had already passed. At one point, as if to remind us that there was still life here, a flock of sheep wandered onto the road. They spread across it slowly without any urgency, completely ignoring the fact that we were trying to pass. And somewhere off to the side appeared a shepherd on a donkey, who returned my wave with some gestures and a slight smile, as if we're the most natural things in the world. And in a way, it was. We kept going. Kilometers disappeared beneath the wheels, the light faded quickly, and the space around us grew emptier and quieter. Another 2 hours passed as we tried to get closer to the water, and believe me, it wasn't easy, especially once darkness fully settled in. But when you find yourself in a place that aren't obvious, even seemingly simple things become complicated, and that's exactly what finding a place to camp felt like here. Until, finally, after dark, we came across a narrow spit of land, yet another place that felt almost unreal. A thin strip of ground reaching into the water, surrounded by silence and darkness. until sunrise, when everything revealed just how spectacular this place truly was. Sunrise in a place like this is hard to put into words. Despite the morning chill, made sharper by the moisture in the air, you just want to step outside and stand there, looking ahead at the world slowly coming to life. Although here, that awakening was visible only in the changing color of the light as the sun slowly climbed higher. Everything else felt almost lifeless, immersed in silence and stillness. As the sun rose, the wind stopped. Literally, when the sun finally appeared from behind the surrounding hills, it felt silent, as if intimidated by its presence. Not even the slightest ripple disturbed the mirror-like surface on which the first rays of sunlight began to fall. Lake Tas in central Anatolia is the second largest lake in Turkey, known for its extreme salinity, around 340 grams per liter, and its surface covered in white salt during summer. In Turkish, its name means salt lake. It's a shallow 1 to 2 meters endoraining basin that fills with water in winter and dries out in summer, forming a pink or white salt desert. Its surface area fluctuates between 1,500 and 2,500 square kilometers depending on the season. This is one of those landscapes that looks more like an abstraction than a real place. The best way to experience the lake is from the causeway. Driving along it, you get the feeling that someone sliced the world with perfectly straight lines. On both sides, there isn't water in the traditional sense. It's more like a surface on the edge of states, sometimes resembling a frozen lake, sometimes an endless salt field, and in places just a thin layer of water spread across a white crust with those unreal reddish tones tracing the shoreline. That color comes from life in extreme conditions, microorganisms that tint the space and give it that surreal character. As the sun rises higher, everything softens. Colors fade into pale pinks and milky whites, as if someone diluted paint with water. The boundary between these worlds isn't sharp. It dissolves, blending into irregular organic patterns. Standing on the spit, beneath the wheels we had a mix of hard, cracked salt and a damp, soft crust, with a thin layer of water spearing over it in places. Driving out there was a bit of an experiment. You never quite knew where the ground would still hold, but of course we took the risk. It was hard to imagine a more remote and beautiful place. The causeway itself is a raw and technical, built from rock and covered with gravel. Its surface is stable, with nothing deceptive about it. Moving along it feels completely safe. And its very presence in the middle of this unreal world allows you to experience it even more fully. On one side, you see an almost uniform matte white, like milk spilled and left to dry. On the other, blues, grays, sometimes delicate pink tones. That's the effect of the thin layer of water reflecting the sky while dissolving the salt beneath. Lake Tass is responsible for about 70% of Turkey's edible salt production, up to 1 million tons annually. Large salt facilities are located in the northern part of the lake. Those squares you see are evaporation ponds, saltons, the heart of the entire salt production process. The principle is simple. Lake water, already highly saline, is directed into a system of basins, and then the rest is done by sun and wind, which gradually evaporate the water. The different colors of the ponds reflect different stages of salinity. The red pond indicates very high salinity. Microorganisms, mainly algae, appear and produce pigments, carotenoids, that protects them from intense sunlight and give the water its pink hue. The blue pond has lower salinity. Those organisms are not present yet, so the water retains a more natural color. The causeway can be accessed from two sides, either from the village of Bozan or through the salt facility we're currently driving through. We came from the Bozan side. The road there is longer and rougher, but you have 100% certainty no one will stop you. The access through the facility is shorter and the road is better, but there is a guard post and barrier at the entrance. Apparently, access depends on the guard's mood, but we had no issue leaving.
Teşekkür. Ten był jakiś przyjaźnie nastawiony.
Tak, serdecznie.
Apparently, due to climate change and agricultural activity, the lake has been shrinking dramatically in recent years, so if you have the chance, visit it while you still can. Especially considering it lies just about 200 kilometers from Cappadocia, which is exactly where we're heading next. It's truly one of the most unreal places I've ever been to. Just keep in mind that the lake is located quite literally in the middle of nowhere. There's no major town nearby, so accommodation options are practically non-existent. And since the best time to visit is at sunrise or sunset, you may need to spend the night in your car. It's definitely something worth considering when planning your trip to this incredible place. We begin our time in Cappadocia in Pasabag Valley, also known as Monk's Valley. These are the first fairy chimneys that greet us after leaving the D300 road. At this point, we don't really know where anything is yet, so we just follow our instinct and head deeper in, trying to experience these formations up close. At first, this place feels a bit different from the postcard images of Cappadocia. There are quite a lot of green fields here, and the surrounding hills don't immediately reassemble those iconic hat-shaped columns. So for a moment, we drive on slightly disappointed, wondering if we actually came to the right place, until we reach the first viewpoint and finally get a proper look at the landscape. And that's when we started to feel it. Beneath us stretches a landscape that began forming millions of years ago. It all starts back when this part of Anatolia was volcanically active. Successive eruptions covered the land with layers of ash, which over time hardened into a soft rock, tuff. In some places, a harder layer of basalt settled on top, like a natural shield. For thousands of years, wind and water did their work. Slowly, relentlessly, they removed what was weaker. Where that protective layer was missing, the land simply eroded away, but where it remained, these formations began to emerge. Mushroom-like shapes, spikes crowned with dark basalt caps. Some have a single head, others look like they've stacked, as if built from several pieces balanced on top of each other. No two are the same. There's no single focal point here, nowhere for your eyes to settle for long. And then there's the light. It brings out textures, reveals details, carves shadows between the forms. And suddenly, this surreal landscape starts to make sense, because in the end, it's all the result of a very simple process, stretched across a timescale that's almost impossible to comprehend. And what looks completely unreal today is simply the outcome of nature's patience. And this is only half of the story, because in the next episode, you'll see that people didn't just arrive here, they learned how to live within this landscape. Stick around till the end. A bit of Polish humor you probably won't fully understand, but you'll feel it. Pure vibe from the road.
Chcesz kawałek bułki?
Nie.
Dobrze.
I z czym tą bułkę będziesz jadł? Z tą truskawką zakurzoną?
Z czym popadnie? Pod warunkiem, że jest to ser i dżem. Gdzie jest ser?
Psujesz mi film.
Cieniutki plasterek serka. Cieniuteńki.
Nie no, weź teraz cały ten ser.
Wiem, tak.
Ale burdel tu jest.
Jest, to prawda. A jaki u góry jest burdel?
Kiedy?
Ja ale gadka jak z nurkiem pod wodą. Nie powiedziałem, kurwa, nic, żeby można było zadać pytanie kiedy.
To jest głośno.
Powiedziałem, a jaki burdel jest u góry?
No.
No. Skomentowała. No.
Tak wygląda szczęście? Nie widać, gdzie jesteśmy. Możemy być równie dobrze pod Płockiem.
Jesteśmy pod Radomiem.